tolerance and courtesy while working in the best interests of our community. We now have apologies. I've received none, but are there any apologies? If not, we'll move to confirmation of minutes. This goes way back to the 26th of March. I'll move that we accept the minutes of the 26th of March meeting. Do I have a seconder, please?
Second.
Thank you. And it's been seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Aye. Carried. Are there any declarations of potential conflict of interest? No, there are no petitions, there is no public input, no local board input, no extraordinary items that I have been made aware of. And we come to item number 9, Food Safety Information Bylaw, but I've been asked to do a roll call again. My apologies for having to do this, but it's important that we know everybody's been able to connect. Bill Cashmore.
Present.
Josephine Bartley.
Present.
Kathy Casey.
Yeah, I'm here, Phil.
Professor Collins.
I'm here, Sue.
Pippa Coombe.
Present, thanks.
Linda Cooper.
Aye.
Angela Dalton.
Present.
Chris Darby. Chris, are you with us?
Yeah.
No. Okay, I'll hold that over. Alf Filipina.
Aye.
Aye. Chris Fletcher.
Present.
Shane Henderson.
Yes, indeed.
Richard Hills. I like that youthful enthusiasm. Tracy Mulholland.
Present.
Thank you. Daniel Newman.
Good afternoon.
Greg Sayers.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
Desley Simpson.
Present.
Sharon Stewart. Sharon, we got you there?
Yes.
Yep, thank you. David's not with us. Wayne Walker.
Here.
John Watson.
Present.
Glenn Wilcox.
I'm only here, Mr. Mayor, just for the food safety bylaw.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. And Paul Young.
I'm here, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you very much. So we come to item number 9, which is the Food Safety Information Bylaw 2020. I just check I've got my officers there, Paul Wilson and Elizabeth Osborne. Paul and Elizabeth, are you on the line?
Yep, we're on the line, and we have Veronica Lee Thompson here too. Okay,
and Veronica. And what I'll do, just before I get you to introduce it, this time I think I've got it right, Daniel. You were the chair of the hearings panel, so I'll ask you to move it, and maybe Tracy Mulholland, you were also on the panel. Could I ask Tracy to second it?
Thank you.
Happy to do so and introduce.
Okay, that's great. Would you like to introduce it first, or do you want me to go to officers first, Daniel?
I'm happy to introduce and speak
okay.
now.
Okay, the floor is yours. Councillor Newman.
Well, thank you, Your Worship. I don't know how long the Skype will hold out. The panel presents its recommendations on public feedback and local board input to the proposed new Food Safety Information Bylaw 2020. I want to acknowledge the panel members, Councillors Paul Young and Tracy Mulholland, and IMSB member Glenn Wilcox, who is on the line. As a background, the existing Food Safety Bylaw 2013, it expires on the 23rd of May 2020. In July last year, the governing body adopted for public consultation a statement proposal for the new Food Safety Information Bylaw. The bylaw continues to require most Auckland-only cafes, restaurants and takeaways to display a food grade, specifies physical locations for food grade display, introduces a new rule for the display of food grades on digital platforms that the food business has control over, for example, a cafe website managed by the cafe owner. Your Worship, public feedback on the proposal was open from the 2nd of December last year and closed on the 2nd of February this year. People could give their feedback online by email or post and at drop-in sessions at Auckland markets and at key stakeholder sessions. And I want to acknowledge Paul and Lizzie and the other officers who worked to facilitate that consultation, as well as my colleagues, were able to participate in those public engagement events. The Council notified that the public consultation through our Auckland online and print magazine and directly via email and post to marae committees, food business operators, industry stakeholders, local boards, and a representative people's panel sample. In total, there were 1,498 people and organisations who provided feedback, and that compares to 31 submissions in 2013. 3 local boards provided written input to the panel on public feedback from their local board areas, and all supported the proposal. And the 3 local boards were Puki Papa, Otara Papatoi and Franklin. Your Worship, the panel deliberated on the public feedback and the local input via Skype on the 14th of April this year. Our recommendations are summarised in the table in the report on page 11 and in more detail in attachment A to the panel report, and you can find that on page 13. Our recommendations support the intent of the proposal and recommend changes in response to the matters raised, including allowing flexibility to food safety businesses to either display an image of the food grade or a statement of the food grade and a link to the Council's Food Grade Search website. We recommended to delay the commencement of the new digital food grade display requirement to the 31st of December this year due to the significant impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on food businesses and their employees. And there was discussion around that, so we voted for the 31st of December this year as a compromise. And third, the current alert level 3 conditions do allow for online food sales, and we encourage businesses to digitally display their food grade but do not wish to make this mandatory. I would ask that the governing body approve the panel recommendations and adopt the new Food Safety Information Bylaw and attachment C on the agenda report. Once again, I want to thank my panel members and the staff. We're here to answer any questions, and I'm aware that Paul and Elizabeth and Veronica are also on the line.
Thank you very much, Councillor Newman, and thank you for the work you've put into that, along with Tracy Mulholland, Paul Young and Glenn Wilcox. Paul Wilson and Elizabeth and Veronica, that's a pretty full introduction. Is there anything that you need to add to that?
No, nothing further to add.
Okay, that's great. Well, look, I think that's pretty straightforward. So there may not be a lot of questions and comments, but I'll just open it up. We'll run the two together once again for comments or questions arising out of these recommendations. I'll pause only momentarily before putting the motion. So if you've got something you really want to ask, please.
Yeah, Chris Darby.
Chris.
Sorry, thank you, Daniel, for that, Councillor Newman, for that summary. Just in terms of the dispensation through to 31 December, can you just go over that again, please? The line was cutting in and out.
My apologies, Chris, for the intermittent line. Yeah, look, one of the suggestions was that we delay the introduction for a full 12 months, noting the impact of COVID-19 on premises. That proposal wasn't unanimously supported by the panel, and so one option was one amendment that was put up and agreed by the panel was that we delay the introduction to the end of December this calendar year.
Thank you. A comment.
Sorry, I deleted. I muted myself there. Just does that put any pressure on the organisation leading into that Christmas period, you know, when everybody's scurrying around? And the second question also for either Daniel or Councillor Newman or the staff is not making it mandatory to display the food grade. Did I hear that correctly? I was a bit surprised if that's the case.
Well, we're working on the advice of the staff that in terms of the implementation of the bylaw, that it could work if we go to the 31st of December this year. The proposal, the initial suggestion from officers was maybe we defer the introduction for 12 months, but we had a debate and we resolved that the 31st of December would be a workable time frame, and that was in discussion with officers. Paul, do you want to reflect on that as well?
It's me.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I think what the panel was getting at was we wanted to not put undue burden on food businesses when they were just starting up again. So we wanted to provide a bit of a lead-in time before it became mandatory. So on the one hand, the panel was saying we certainly encourage you where you can to display your food grade on your digital platforms now. But we are giving a long lead-in time before it becomes a mandatory requirement. And as for implementation, obviously that'll be as part of the graduated approach that Environmental Health Unit takes on all these matters. And that's the way it'll be handled over that initial mandatory period around December, January.
Thank you. And the second part of Councillor Darby's question?
Well, look, what I would say is that I don't believe that that there would be any concession given if we weren't in a COVID-19 environment that's affected these food retailers. So, yeah, look, I accept that this is a matter for debate, but I think that the panel's recommendations are very much affected by the economic situation that currently applies to that industry.
Sorry, I was seeking clarification. I had the same question as Councillor Darby. They can either display an image of the food grade that will tell you what the food grade is, and then I think, Councillor, you said, or a statement of the grade and a link of the grade to the Council's food grade search web page. But the statement, in the written copy of the executive summary I've just got, or a statement, does that mean that either way they have to put the grade up, because the purpose for the consumer's point of view is to see what the grade of the restaurant is and to therefore encourage the restaurant or the takeaway bar or cafe to strive for the highest standards? Could you just explain what the alternative options are?
I'm going to ask Paul to. I'm just trying to bring up the report on my phone. So Paul, can you? Paul Wilson, can you comment on that? I just want to bring up the document myself.
Yes, I can. So originally the proposal went out, which was very simply saying, hey, look, we'd like you to display an image of your food grade certificate on a digital platform that you control, so that the same as you walk into a shop, you'd see the grade. Same when you walk onto the digital platform, you'd see the grade. But the feedback we got was overwhelmingly in support of the idea, but then we received a lot of feedback about how it actually worked in practice. And the food businesses wanted a bit of flexibility as to how they displayed the food grade. So the panel decision was to give that flexibility by saying you can either display the food grade, or you can state what your food grade is and then have a link to the council's website that would confirm the grade.
Okay, so either way you're setting the grade out. It just kind of it was slightly ambiguous that would refer you to a website where you could find out what the grade was, which would be very much second best. Okay, I think that clarifies it. Does that clarify your question, Councillor Darby?
Yeah, it does. As long as it's clear, when you are a consumer, a customer, you can see what that grade is. Most restaurants are proud to display their A. And they make sure that it's in a visible location. The other place where you access you're not necessarily on the food premise, so you might be taking a portal through an ordering site, a website, or something like that. So does it extend to that as well? I just think this is really important that we, as Aucklanders and visitors, we can see clearly what the food grade is, whether we order online or in store.
question's clear, Councillor. Paul Wilson, do you have an answer to that?
Yes, through the chair. So that is certainly the intention of the amendment. The panel was striking the balance between making sure that it was easy for people to see it when they went onto those home pages or similar of the digital platform, and at the same time giving a bit more flexibility to the food businesses how they met that requirement.
Okay. Member Glenn Wilcox.
Sorry, Your Worship. I'd just like to comment firstly about the
Glenn.
digital. Yes. Are you hearing me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. I'd just like to comment first regarding the panel. It was regarding the digital decision. That was discussed quite robustly, and we did decide in the end that actually, if you're running a restaurant or a takeaway food joint now, you would virtually have done all this and have been doing your website in the last 4 weeks. It's just occurred. And I suppose that's my comment really about this recommendation. And I'd just like to say that in a pre-COVID-19 lockdown situation, this bylaw would be more than adequate. Unfortunately, the world turned very fast in 1 month. And now the decision really is, it's adequate as far as the law is concerned. However, what has happened is online delivery and online ordering have become the rule rather than the exception, unless you're lined up at KFC, of course. But what I did want to say is that what it's created, and I'm just looking at my notes here, is there is confusion over who is responsible for the delivery. And it's no use having an A grade in your premises when it's your role and when it's your responsibility to ensure that it gets to the customer as A grade. So the transportation from your premises to the customer is the restaurant's responsibility. So it is the restaurant's responsibility to ensure that the delivery agent, whether that's Uber or anybody else, is carrying those goods, that food and that takeaway to the customer in their house and delivering it to them in a safe, hygienic way that conforms with an A-grade rating. So this is something that's a shared responsibility between the contractor who delivers it and also by the restaurant. So that's the comment that I'd just like to make in a post-COVID-19 situation where online has become the rule. The Food Safety Act does not cover a lot of this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Wilcox. That's very helpful. I've got no further questions, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 To the contrary, I declare that carried. And once again, thank the panel for their hard work, Daniel, Tracy, Paul and Glenn. We come now to item number 10, which is the Plan Change 10, Historic Heritage Schedule, Errors, Anomalies and Information Update. I'll just check that I've got our officers online. I should have Megan Patrick, Team Leader, and John Dogood. Have we got both Megan and John on the line?
I'm here.
That's Megan, and yes. John's there too. So before I get you to outline it, I'll ask Councillor Darby to move and Councillor Bartley to second the motion to approve the plan change.
All good, yes.
Good, and Councillor Bartley?
Yes, all good, thank you.
Thank you, and I'll ask Megan and John to talk to the paper, please.
I'm happy to introduce it. Plan Change 10 corrected errors and updated information for 146 historic heritage places identified in the unitary plan. This report seeks approval for the plan change. Please.
I've got terrible quality, Megan. I can get you to ring in. Which might be on the basis of past experience the easiest way to do it. Have you got the number to ring in on?
I do. I will ring in right now.
Okay, and while you're ringing in, I'll get John just to see if he's got any comments he wants to make on the paper. John, your line was clearer, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is really a procedural item. I think as members of the governing body will be fairly familiar, making plan changes to the unitary plan operative is a matter that can't be delegated to staff or a subcommittee, and that's set out in the Resource Management Act. So all plan changes, public and private, eventually end back with the Planning Committee, and in this case, bring it back to you as governing body. So Megan was just outlining the content of the plan change. It was really fixing errors and anomalies with the heritage places in the plan. We had one appeal. The appeal is now resolved. It's been settled, and that's been endorsed by the Environment Court. So the plan change can now become operative, which is a great result. And we're really just seeking your endorsement of that recommendation. We'll then undertake the steps required to update the unitary plan and put a public notice in the paper.
Thank you very much. That probably covers it pretty well. Have we got Megan back on the line?
Unfortunately, I'm having trouble calling in.
Oh, okay. Has John covered the points that you were going to make, Megan, or is there something you'd like to add?
No, John's covered it very well. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mayor. And
the quality of your voice has just improved. So we have we'll take questions and comments together, and I've had an indication from Councillor Desley Simpson that she has a question. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Look, I sent my questions through and I thought they'd be covered, but I'll just ask them again quickly. So is it correct that councillors cannot interfere with the decision now other than to accept it? And my second question is, are all parties now in agreement with the decision?
And that can go to John or Megan. Who would like to answer that?
Megan had the questions in advance from Councillor Simpson. So Megan, if you're there, I'll hand over to you.
Yes, I'm happy to answer those two questions. Please call out if my quality is poor again. In answer to the second question, there were two parties, the Hebrew Congregation and Auckland Council, and both of us were signed the consent order and were satisfied with the outcome. In answer to the first question, the consent order for the synagogue was signed under delegated authority. It has been endorsed by the Environment Court, and those provisions under the RMA are now considered in effect to be operative. So you are correct. This is the final step in the plan making process, and it is procedural in nature. There's limited, if not no, ability to influence the outcome of that appeal resolution.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yep, that was very clear. Now, this is pretty straightforward, so I'm not imagining we have a lot of comments or questions, but is there any other person with a comment or a question they'd like to make? If not, I'll put
just
the
following Chris Darby,
yeah,
Mayor. Just to follow on, I'm hearing Councillor Simpson's question about, this is just procedural and you just vote for it. That is not the case. There's still a motion to be put. And if a councillor, despite all the evidence and the agreement, wants to vote against it, they still can vote against it. It would be rather strange, but I've seen stranger things at council.
I think if we know that this is an order of the court, that's the final step, and that was the advice that Megan has given us. Any further questions or comments? If not, I'm going to put the resolution. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 To the contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. We now come to the last item on our agenda. The last substantive item I've got here, which is the adoption of Silverdale West Dairy Flat Industrial Area Structure Plan. I'll again ask Councillor Darby and Councillor Bartley to move and second.
Yep.
I'll invite, we should have on our line as officers Warren McLennan, Manager of Planning, Peter Vari, Team Leader, both from the Northwestern Islands, and Dave Paul, Principal Planner. Who would like to lead a brief introduction?
Good afternoon, Mr Mayor and Councillors. It's Warren McLennan here. I'll just give a brief introduction to the plan change. First of all, you'll note that it's an industrial area structure plan. So it is about industry, business land of various types, because to the north of it is a significant area of residential, and that's growing all the time, and to the south is the Dairy Flat area, which one day will have 60, 70, 80,000 people to the south anyway. So this is specifically around the business land. So the area it's a reasonably large area. It's about 600 square metres, but probably about 300 of it is usable because of some of the flooding constraints and some allocation for roading and so on. And it is to be developed. The structure plan shows 3 stages of development of the business land, and that's through to 2048. So the first part is just the northern part, and that's the area that we're looking to, once this is approved, start drafting a plan change to zone the land. So last year we put the draft area plan, structure plan out for submission, got about 200 submissions received, and spent quite a bit of time going through those submissions and looking to see what improvements we would make. And in particular, we discussed these at length with the political working party, which were councillors Cashmore, Darby, Newman, Walker, and Hills. And there was local board members relating to the various structure plans, and also IMSB member Glenn Wilcox. So we had quite a group who went through these. As a result of the submissions, and particularly as a result of the political reference group, we've made some changes to that draft structure plan. We've been a bit clearer about the staging, so that people know that even though a structure plan is completed, stage 3 will be very much later on in the process. So that's from 2038 to 48, I think it is the third stage. So it's a long time away. We have also put in a bit more explanation around, there is a part of the structure plan in the middle and not far from the North Shore airfield, which we're suggesting it could be heavy industry. Now that's not till a lot later on. I think that's not likely to be zoned till the early 2030s, and we really don't know enough about what business land will be at that stage. What we will do is review that zoning or review that area for zoning before we actually launch into a plan change, and I think that will make some people feel a lot happier. What else? We've also added, particularly as a result of the political reference group, quite a section on climate change and the effects that this development will have, and we've had some quite specific wording from Alec Tong and Matthew Blakey around that, and they've added sections which really foreshadow the fact that in the future there will be more controls that we will be looking to apply, both through reduction of greenhouse and also impact. A slight change just taking just over a hectare out to follow the new alignment of a supporting growth road, the alignment of Argent Road and Pine Valley Road. So the next steps we have is approved by the
I think we've lost you, Warren. You were going great guns there. We lost you just about 30 seconds ago. I think you're back with us. Are you there, Warren?
So our next...
Yeah, we've lost you, but I don't think you think you've lost us.
No, I don't. You're...
I think you're back with us now, but maybe we won't tempt fate. So if I can get you just to, it's been a very thorough explanation, thank you. But if we can get you to wind it up and just any other key points that you need to make.
Planetary, the next thing.
I'm sorry, Warren. We keep losing you. What I might do, if you can hear me, is get you to ring back in. I presume you're on Skype. Just if there's anything else that you need to add, and meanwhile, I'll just I'll give councillors a chance if they want to make some brief comments. Can you hear what I'm saying, Warren?
Yes.
Yeah, so can I get you to phone back in, please? And meanwhile, I might ask Councillor Darby if he's got any comments that he wants to make as chair of the Planning Committee.
Number?
Yeah, I'll get Sandra to text you
John,
the number.
12.
It's in the invite, I think.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Councillor Darby, is there any comment that you'd like to add? I think it's reasonably straightforward, and I'm assuming that this is a result of a consensus of views of the political working group.
Assure was really long democratic process with the community.
Oh dear, we don't seem to be having much luck here, Chris. We keep losing you. Am
I clear, Mr. Mayor?
Yep. Councillor Cashmore, you have a crack.
Right.
Third time lucky.
If I break up, shut me down. So, councillors, it was a very thorough process. We went through different iterations, and I thank all the councillors and local board members on it. But I'd particularly like to thank the staff, because we were pretty rigorous in our assessment of the different criteria. And the process that was done in the northwest is also repeated in the south as well. So there's been a consistency of approach, a thoroughness of application, and I think I would really like to commend Warren and his team for their the hard work they put in, and also the thoroughness of that work. It was comprehensive, and that's indicated by the submissions that we received. Thanks.
Thanks, and you seem to be accompanied by bongo drums there, Bill. I'm not quite sure what's going on.
No drums here, Mr. Mayor. They must be ringing in your head.
Well, that accounts for the echo, I guess. Thank you. Councillor Greg Sayers, I don't know what that noise is, but it's pretty persistent. I'm not the only one hearing it. No, that's good.
Sounds like a boombox.
Yeah.
Everything else beat along with it.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Greg Sayers, I think you had a question or a comment to make.
Oh, just a comment, Mr. Mayor, because it's inside the Rodney Ward, the area that we're talking about, and it's really just to echo. Bill really said everything I need to say, just in terms of the professionalism, not just of the working party, but I just really wanted to congratulate and compliment the staff. I went along to the open sessions that they had with the public. There was a lot of engagement there, feedback, and has gone into it, and it's all been very professional. So I will certainly be endorsing the recommendation. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. A comment here or a question from Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment, basically to thank Warren and the team for a job well done here, and also for those elected members who were involved. Councillor Sayers is right. This is, you know, in his ward, but it's one of those areas they're going to serve, you know, two wards, because the Hibiscus Coast is definitely going to be the beneficiary in terms of what happens in Silverdale West and Derry Flat, particularly as it goes to jobs. So I support the staged approach that's being made here, and you know, the very real prospect that hopefully, unlike some other parts of Silverdale in the past which have had the capacity, the planned capacity for jobs, and have turned out quite differently, that will really be able to nail a, you know, a substantial working base here for the, you know, the tens of thousands of residents that are going to be, that are here already, and the other ones that are coming real fast. I would just also commend the feedback from some of the iwi groups in terms of their environmental concerns going to this structure plan. This area, even though it's in, you know, Derry Flat and Silverdale West, it does feed into a very, very sensitive area ecologically, into the Waiti River and ultimately into Karapiro Bay, and they are significant ecological areas in the Auckland Unitary Plan. So I've read through the various provisos that have been noted here in terms of the future land use and taking account of the new risks of contamination, as well as an opportunity to try and improve the outcomes from moving from farming to this other use. So I'm sure it won't just be the iwi, but certainly the communities up there have a high degree of sensitivity to protecting these environmental areas where this area in particular is going to feed into, and to improving the outcomes from those that have happened with other massive big scale developments, not least of which has been the ones around Akura and the marine reserve around there. So thank you to the people that worked on that, and certainly thank you for the feedback from the iwi in particular in terms of highlighting that environmental concern, which is something that I think will find a lot of community support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wayne Walker.
Sure. I've got a number of issues to raise, Mr. Mayor, and I certainly battled in the various meetings that I attended consistently around the structure plan. The overriding concern I've got is that much of this structure plan is business as usual in terms of our approach. I think the comments around climate change are lip service. So I'll raise a number of issues specifically. In 5.9, it mentions the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. There is no mention in the structured plan around a significant part of the receiving environment, which is the marine reserve. And there are quite clearly constraints around that. So that is a notable omission, which has been the subject of considerable environment challenge. It should be in there. So I just don't know why it is. I certainly have raised that. There is a mention, it's on page 88, around sediments will need to be managed. Frankly, that's not adequate considering the sensitivity of the marine environment. The other concern that I've got is around wastewater, where all the wastewater from this area will be pumped a colossal distance all the way down the Whangapara Peninsula. So in terms of the way we're managing our wastewater, just in respect of energy, which is probably somewhere between $1 million and $2 million a year to pump the stuff down the peninsula, this is not good for climate action, particularly given that the water is treated to a degree where you could almost drink it. If you've got industrial and commercial facilities that conceivably have water demand, that water should be mined and processed in the areas. So we have an opportunity to do things differently. There is no mention around any water storage. that these large industrial buildings, commercial buildings with huge surface areas are going to have. And this is against a background where this structure plan includes 3 floodplains, which will also be significantly impacted by climate change. So I'm bringing those things to the attention of the other councillors. It's disappointing that it is very much business as usual, and I reflect again on a decision-by-decision basis, we increasingly lock ourselves in to a climate future that is not good. So I just wonder whether the officers want to make any comments on those issues I'm raising, and whether or not it's not still possible to make some changes whereby we lift our game and have an area that embraces the circular economy rather than is dependent on catchments elsewhere and shifting its waste elsewhere.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just see if Warren McLennan, is he back on the line? If not, I'll go to Peter Fari maybe to answer those. Those were questions around lack of mention of marine reserve, the management of sediments, wastewater and water storage. Are you on the line, Peter, with us?
I am, and I'm going to ask Dave Paul to answer the first question about the effect on the marine reserve, because we've been very careful to ensure that the land we've taken that into account in the planning regime we have. So I'll get Dave to answer the specific question in that regard.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. If we haven't mentioned the marine reserve, that can easily be added in. We've still got an opportunity to do that. On the other issues around sediment, the Healthy Waters are in the process of preparing a comprehensive stormwater catchment management plan for the whole area. So that uses and looks at current best practice. And on the water storage thing, we've identified in the climate change section that as we go through the plan change process, we need to look at those options in conjunction with Healthy Waters and water care. In terms of the wastewater disposal, we're operating on the best advice that we have from water care. So I'm not quite sure how we can deviate from their professional advice in terms of that service delivery. Thank you.
May I make another comment, Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, I'll just see if Peter's got anything further to add to that.
No, Mr. Mayor, that would be our conclusion. And as Dave said, in terms of climate change, the next step will be a plan change to rezone the first stage of this land. And when we do that, things like how we deal with roof water and whether we require people to have roof tanks for various things will be something we consider as part of that plan change process. So there are still options open to us as we go through that process.
Thank you. Wayne, very briefly in reply.
Sure. The other brief comment I'd make is I am encouraged that in the structure plan there is protection for the stream network, and there is also a buffer to screen the industry commercial from the motorway. So that's great. What I suggest we need to hold firm to is to retain these gains and lock them in, not do what tends to happen in other structure plans where we cave into the developers who say, no, they don't want to do that. And that is effectively how the stream network in Silverdale North has been largely annihilated. So we can do better here. Let's stick to our guns and make sure we do a really good job.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I'll put the resolution and I'll do it on the voice unless people want to call a division. This is to adopt the structure plan and to authorise the Manager North Western Island to make minor amendments. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 To
And
to the contrary, no.
If I can have some concerns noted, that would please me, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll note your concern about various aspects of the structure plan. I declare the motion carried. The last item on the agenda is consideration of extraordinary business, and none was notified. So I thank councillors and the IMSB for attending today. It's been quite a long day, and look forward to catching up with you next weekend. Next week. Have a good weekend, and I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Phil.
Everybody. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.